What is God's will? The word will in A Course in Miracles needs to be understood so we can really understand what this word points to as we read about God's will. So God's will for us is perfect happiness. And he says, one of the lessons is I join God's will for me to have perfect peace and happiness. So what is this word will? So you might think of will as being willful. In other words, we use that word willful as a way of saying that there's a will, as in it's something that the body does. It's very willful, or the mind's willful. So it's sort of like it's got its own way of doing things, something that's about like pushing something forward but the way to understand God's will is to have an idea that it's really about God's beingness, because God really doesn't have a will. God doesn't sit there and say, I want Kate to have peace and happiness. And another way to understand this word is to say God's beingness is my happiness. So there's a beingness. God is the beingness of peace and happiness and joy and love. So it's a beingness of it. And that being is our being. So without thought, without the ego thought system, we have this beingness of peace and happiness. So my will is really for peace and happiness, but I've forgotten my beingness, my pure beingness in this beautiful love and peace and joy. And I've made up something where I've forgotten, and I feel like I have my own will. And so that other will feels very real, and that other will is not about beingness. That will is about getting. So it feels like this will that we've made up is all about getting something, and that getting is really part of this idea that I've lost something and so I need to get something. So coming back to this will of God, that I'm happy when I'm joined, my will and God's are joined. It's really I'm happy when my beingness is joined with the beingness of God, because God doesn't do anything. God is a word that points us to something that is always beautiful, vast, eternal, infinite joy, peace, and happiness. It's a beingness of that. It has no opposite. And we can experience that again. We have to let go of this other will that we've put in place that comes from a thought system. So God's will for me is perfect peace and happiness. It's really pointing back to that the beingness of God is perfect peace and happiness. And I was created and I'm living in that perfect peace and happiness. And it's in my mind. It's nowhere else but within me. And when I let go of the blocks that are blocking that beingness, I'm going to start to remember and experience that again. So that's a way to think about this word will and maybe understand it a little bit better. So my blessing to you today is I am innocent. I am guiltless. I am holy. I am love. I am sinless. And I join you in that. I join you in God's mind. of beautiful, holy, innocent, playful joy. Amen.